there everyone, and welcome to another coding section. If you have subscribed to this channel, I want to say a big thank you. But if you haven't subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below the screen or on my logo to subscribe to this channel. This channel is about coding using C#, VB.NET, SQL, Link to SQL, and Xamarin. And in this tutorial, we'll be looking at SQL Server Management Studio. The Studio is an IDE that provides a graphical interface for connecting and working with the Microsoft SQL Server. So from my view, I'm going to go to SQL Server Management Studio. I'll click on SQL Server Management Studio 2017. The one I have is 2017. If you don't have SQL Server Management Studio on your system, you can as well download it from Microsoft site. I think the latest version is 2019, so you can as well download and install it on your system. Now my Management Studio is up. The first thing that pop up is the Connect to Server dialog box. Now the Connecting to Server dialog box, you see the server type is the database engine. I will do a separate video on the database engine, but the summary about database engine is to drive the SQL server. Then I have my server name and my authentication type. The authentication type I'm using here is the SQL Server authentication, which requires me to enter a password to log into my Management Studio. But if I click on Windows authentication, it will not ask for a password to log into my SQL Server Management Studio. But for the configuration part, I'm going to use the SQL Server authentication, and I'm going to click on Connect to connect to my Studio. After a successful connection, on the left side of your main window, we'll have the Object Explorer. Now the Object Explorer, you can change various settings of the SQL Server Management engine, and also you can deploy database. You can also create your database from the left from the Object Explorer. So we are going to look at just creating a simple database. Then we'll go about queries, how to do some simple queries on SQL database. So from my Object Explorer, I'm going to click on the plus icon that is close to this folder named database. Once I click on it, it will drop down. There are some databases I created so far, but I'm going to create just a new database. Like I said, the Studio is a graphical interface, so you can just create your database without writing the SQL code in how to create a database from scratch. So now on this pop-up dialog box, we have the new database where you have to create your database name. The database name is not case sensitive, so you can just type in the name you want, and it's also user defined. So any name you feel like typing, you're going to type. So for this lecture, I'm going to create a simple database on how to hold student information, or rather customer information. So my database is going to be customer info, or I'll just say customer database. Then now there's so many things about this database. I'm going to explain them to you. Now from this view where you have your database file, we have the file type, the file group, the initial size. By default, when you create any database, the initial size is 3 megabytes. It's up to you. You can as well increase the database size if you want to, or you can leave it like this. Then we have the auto growth or the max size. Now the auto growth, when you click on the 3 ellipse button, the auto growth is to allow your database to auto increment on its own by a particular file size. You can allow it to increase by 1 megabyte, or you can increase the file size on how you want your database to grow. Now, the beauty about this auto growth on this customer database is if your database is increasing based on the information you are putting in or based on the information that is coming in, and the database gets to this initial size that is here by 3 megabytes, your application or your database will tend to be slow. But if you set this auto growth on your database, by the time it's approaching that 3 megabyte size, it has already incremented or it has already added one megabyte size to your database, and that helps the database not to be slow in process. Then we have the path. By default, SQL Server save the database on a default path. Now it's up to you if you want to change the default file directory or the default path on where your database is being saved. You can leave it by the default or you can change it. Now, by the time I'm through, I'm going to click on OK to execute this little database I've created. And from my Object Explorer, I will see my customer database I've created here. Now, we are going to drop down the plus icon on the database, and below the customer database we have the database diagram. In this course we're going to look at database diagram. Now we have the tables, we have the view. The tables is where you create as many tables, and the table comprises of rows and column, where you create your tables. And we'll be looking at relational database. We'll be linking from one database to another database in the course of our SQL tutorial. Then the views. The views is just like, it's somewhat like a table, but when you're creating your views, use your views to bound or to bind to your application. Like we'll be looking at C# application, how to code with C#. But now that we're looking at SQL, by the time we're done with the how to use the management student in creating a database, we can as well create some views and link it to our Visual Studio, either C# or VB.NET, or if you're working on a Xamarin, you can do that. Then there are other things that are also tied to the customer database, but we're not going to look at them. But our main focus is on how to create a table. But before we look at that, we'll look at the query, the query editor on SQL database. And to go about the query editor, you click on this new query. Now the query editor is an ability in SQL, is a feature in SQL that allows programmers to write their transact SQL. It helps them to do some queries like the select queries, and we're going to show you how some queries look like. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go to a design editor query. I'm not going to write a query, but I'm going to go look at the design query in editor. From the design query editor, you can do some queries like the select queries. By default on the design query editor, we have the select query. But if you want to change your queries, from here we have the insert query, the update query, and the delete query. Those are the key things on the SQL. With time, we'll be looking at the query. So the design query editors, the query, it helps you to query information from your table or tables. Query information and output those information once you are done with your query. So in this place, we're going to create a table. And to do a creating of table, you just right click on the table folder icon under the customer database, and you click on tables. When you do that, the design view on table will show for you. But if you want to write the SQL on how to create a table, we'll look at that in another tutorial. So now I'm going to create customer info table, and the basic information I'll need is just the first name, the last name, and the city. So I'm going to start with creating the first name, data type for first name. Since I'm looking at getting information on first name, my data type here is going to be string. And the data type I'm going to use will be n variable character. And the reason why I'm picking n variable character is because I want to make it flexible for the user in case they want to put in some garbage in for me, like they are adding their first name and they are putting some special symbols or some special characters to their first name. So I'm going to use that variable character. Then the 50 in bracket is just to specify the number of bits or the number of characters that will come in to that first name. I can leave it at 50, I can increase it or I can decrease it, but I'm going to leave it at 50 in this case. Now, allow not is that once the allow not is checked, that means the information can be empty. But if I uncheck it, that means the information should not be empty. So I'm going to leave that allow long. I'm just making it flexible for the user. Then the next information I'm going to enter is the last name. I'm going to call this variable character. Then city, I'm going to call that variable character. Now, this is just a simple table I've created so far. I'll click on Ctrl S to save it, and I'm going to call this table name. For professional practice, I normally write the customer, the name of the table, then I will leave table at the end by the time I'm done with giving the name of my table, like customer info table. That is my own point of view, but you can as well remove the table and just say your table name is called customer info. But for me, I normally leave it as customer info table for reference purpose. Now by the time you click on that OK, that you've saved your table, from your plus icon below on the folder, when you click on okay, I have to refresh this because I'm not seeing my table. So once I do that, I click on the drop down or the plus icon by the side of the folder table. I will see the table I've created called customer table. So now we're going to look at the diagram. Now, normally I make use of my database diagram in creating my table, and the reason why I do that is because if I'm creating information and linking one table to another table, I will just see everything at one view. So I will remove that and go to my database diagram. When you're opening your database by the first time, you'll see this information here. Do you wish to create? Yes, I wish to create. Another way, I'm going to right click on the database and click on new database diagram for it to pop up for me. And since when you click on it, a dialog box will show for you to add table. From the table I've created so far, I have just only one, that is a customer information table. So I'm going to click on add to add the table. And when it's done, you'll see your table information on your view. So now I don't like the way the table is looking like this. You can leave it, some people they leave it like this, but for me, I will change it to I'll change my table view to the standard view. And the standard view is going to show my column name and the data type of my table. In a separate video, we'll look at data type. So I'll click on standard view, and you can see it will show me my first name, the data type, and the properties on my table. If I want to create another table, I can do that from my view, from my diagram view. I'll just right click on it and click on new table. So you can just create your table here. Let's say from my customer information table, I can have let's say customer account table. So I'll just call that customer account table. Now on my customer account table, you can see the table is already here on my view. Now, so right here, I can as well create my column name. My column name in this place is also referred to my field name. So I can just give it, like if I'm creating a customer account table, I can have my customer ID. I can say that to be int. Then my account type, trying to remember what to put account for account types or type. Let's say that will be variable character. Then amount of the customer amount. That will be, if I'm dealing with amount, that is money, I am going to give it my data type called decimal. Decimal 18, 18 is the bit, then the 0 is the number of spaces or the number of decimal places it will go. Then the next, I'm going to say date type, date created, date created, and my data type is going to be called date. And I think those are the basic thing on this my database diagram. So you can see on my database, I'm going to save that to create. Now I'm going to create, like when I click on Ctrl S to save, it's going to save my database diagram, because when I was creating it, I did not save the database diagram. I didn't give it a name. So for the course of this tutorial, I'm going to call it customer diagram. That is the name of the database attached to the diagram. Customer diagram. Like I said earlier, for in my own opinion, I normally leave the information that is a diagram attached to whatever name I want to create for mine, but you can as well change it to the way you want. Now, when you are creating something at first, it's showing that the following table will be saved. Do you want to continue? If you click on yes, it will save every table that you've created on the diagram view. Now, there's something I forgot to put on the customer information table and the customer account table, and that is a column that we increment on its own. Now, to do that, I'm going to right click on the customer information table and click on insert table. Then I'll call that column SN. Then I'm going to right click, data type will be int, that is integer, for it to increment on its own. Then I'm going to right click on the column, go to the property of that column name SN. Then on the identity specification, is identity, I'm going to change that to yes. And the identity incrementation, it should start seeding from 1, meaning once it starts from 1, the next number will be 2, 3, 4, and so on. You can change your identity seeding, and you can change how it's going to increment. My incrementation is incrementing from 1. So it all depends on how you want your number to increment and how it's to start its seeding. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this column name to be a primary key. Now, primary key are just unique key that you can use in getting information from or record from that entire row on the table. I'm going to make that primary key. In another column, another tutorial, I'm going to talk more about keys and index, so you understand the concept about key and index. I'm going to right click on that and set that SN to be primary key. I'm going to do likewise on the customer account table. I'm going to right click, insert another column. I'll call that SN, and I'll make it to start seeding from 1. Right click on that column or click on that column properties and change that to 1. By default, you can see it's seed from 1 and increment from 1. You can change this on how you want it to seed and increment. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to click on SF to save whatever I've done. Now, when you are starting, once you install your management studio and you start creating a new or a fresh database, by default, the saving property will not be enabled, meaning that you cannot save any changes that you make on a table. Now, to uncheck this so that any information you make you can save, we'll do that on the tools property. So I'm going to go there and on the tool tab on my studio, I'll click on option. Then I'll scroll down to is it designer, database designer, table and database designer, and you can see it prevents saving changes that requires a table recreation. So I'm going to uncheck it so that in case there's any recreation on table or on any on tables, it can allow the save. So I'll click on OK so that the information will be saved. Now, once I hit on my Ctrl S to save, you can see the information has changed. So I'll just click on yes so that any changes I make, it will be saved. Now, if you've liked what you've watched, you can as well click on the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. You can as well share, like to this channel, because subsequently I'll be producing videos on SQL. I'll be producing videos on tutorials on C#, VB.NET, Xamarin also. So click on the subscribe button below the screen or on my logo to subscribe to this channel to get regular tutorial on this channel. Thank you for watching this video and please stay safe.